you have to invest and spend your money based on where you're at in order to get to where you want to go versus over investing if you can't afford it.
Welcome to the Agency Profit Podcast, a show dedicated to going deep space on agency operations, which is just as nerdy as it sounds. I'm your host, Marcel Petitpop. I'm the CEO of Parakeeto, a firm that helps digital and creative agencies measure and improve their profitability. Join me as I interview some of the smartest thought leaders and agency owners in our space and go deep into operations, metrics, and all the other things you need to get right so you can spend less time worrying about operations and more time executing on your vision. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Agency Profit Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Jamie Van Cuyk, who is an expert in hiring and onboarding, really helping entrepreneurs grow their team, and is the founder and CEO of Growing Your Team. And she's here today to share her experience and knowledge when it comes to attracting, hiring, and onboarding the right talent for your business. And we're going to dig into the key things you got to be thinking about as you build that next layer of team in the agency, and make sure you do it profitably, you do it sustainably, and you avoid some of the key mistakes that can really make it a negative experience. So with all of that, Jamie, thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
I am excited about this. We had a really fun interview on your show a little while back, and now you're here. And we just had so many shared, I think, perspectives on hiring. And so I'm really excited to get your take. I think it'll be a really great fit for the show here today on how to do that right, because it's a thing that I think we've all struggled with, right? Is trying to bring people onto the team. And when we don't do it well, I think it can put a bad taste in our mouth, and then we start to avoid it, and then we don't grow because we're afraid to let go of things. So very, very timely. But before we get into all of that, I want to make sure you have a chance to, in your own words, describe what you do and who you serve.
Yes. So I am Jamie Van Cuyk, the owner of Growing Your Team. At Growing Your Team, we teach small business owners how to hire like a pro. We do this through hiring education, hiring guidance, providing templates and resources, and also full service recruiting for the business owner that's like, that's great, I understand this, but I know that I need to delegate hiring because I don't have time for it anymore. So our goal is to make sure that you get the right person in the position, not just a warm body into the seat. So we do a lot of work to find out who it is you need, not just the tasks and the roles and responsibilities, but who is going to actually succeed inside your business in this role. And then we design an entire hiring process around that to make sure that you're always looking for and attracting the right person and making the right selection. So you get the person that's going to produce the results that you want.
Jamie, is that the first time that you've done that spiel before? I'm just kidding. That was very polished.
No, definitely not.
I'm impressed. All right. So I am very excited to dig in here because I'm actually in the process of hiring right now. So this is very timely. I'm kind of experiencing all of the thoughts and emotions and challenges and little questions that come up along the way. And of course, the thing that I'm deathly afraid of is wasting a ton of time and wasting a ton of money on a person that comes into the organization and then it doesn't work out. So let's start there. What are some of the things that hiring can do that are negative to the business if it's not done right? And then what are the opportunities if we do get this right? And why is this something that I think as business owners, we still need to be focused on getting really good at?
Yes. Ooh, I love starting there. First off, hiring is so right to get important because in our business, it costs a lot of time, money, and energy when you don't get it right. And if you're coming from a corporate background, chances are you learned how to hire if you hired in the corporate background through trial and error. No one really taught you how to do it right. It was trial and error. But if someone didn't work out, it was like, okay, now I got to do more interviews. But you're like, all right, my paycheck stays the same. Everything stays the same. I just have to go find another person. Where when it's within your own business, you're all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, who's going to pick up the slack of not having this team member? Oh, it's probably me. Who feels the sting of giving someone money and then that person not working out and you feeling like you got no return on your investment? Oh, that's you as the business owner. Who is then going and put in all that time, money, and effort to find that next person? Oh, it's you, the business owner, that's probably heavily involved with that. So there's so much that we feel when we make a mistake in our own business that we want to make sure we get the right person. In addition, when we hire the wrong person, a lot of times our clients feel that error because this person's either working directly with our clients, which means if they're not the right person and they're quickly gone, it either looks bad to our clients because a contact came and gone, or our clients are feeling the mistake. They're not happy because things are not going well. And if the person's not client facing, typically the client sometimes feel it as well because your time or another team member's time is being pulled to deal with that team member that's not working out, which means less time is going towards the actual client work. So there's a lot of things that can really give that negative taste when you don't hire well. But when you do hire well, it gives you the opportunity for you yourself to really elevate your position into that more of that CEO role instead of spending all your time doing all the work or all the client work in your business or all the behind the scenes work as someone else is working with the clients. It also allows you to bring in more revenue. It allows you to increase your customer service levels. It allows a lot of things that really elevate your business and help get your business to that next level and help you achieve your goals.
The thing that we talked a little bit about too on the show that we did together on your podcast is I think the lens on profitability. And I don't think enough people are thinking about hiring as a path to lowering their average cost per hour actually over time. And one of my favorite mental models for this is thinking about where time is being spent in the organization, whether it's for you as the founder, if you're just starting out, or it's other people on your team. And then thinking about like, what are all the things that somebody less expensive could be doing that this person has to do right now? And that really presents a great opportunity to like scale your capacity as a business to bring in revenue, but doing it without these relative increases in cost. So you actually have an opportunity to stretch your margin with every hire. And so I think that's something that I get really excited about the opportunity to do when we get to a place where we're reaching our capacity as a team, is to say, okay, how do we use this hiring opportunity to actually improve the efficiency of the business as well?
Yeah, and I think that that is so true. And if you look at it, so at the time that we're recording this, a lot of times if I don't do a whole lot of hourly work with my clients, but occasionally my past clients, I say, okay, you just need an hour of my time. You can have an hour of my time. And a lot of times I'll charge $200 an hour for that time. I have never hired a long-term team member to help me in my business that I pay $200 an hour. So if I can free up an hour of my time to work with that client and earn $200, I might only be paying a team member to do $20 an hour, or even $30 an hour to do the other work that I would have had to be doing during that time if I didn't have a team member supporting me.
So with that in mind, I think the first place to start is really understanding what your framework is for understanding where and when to hire, which is, I think, one of the first main things that we struggle with as entrepreneurs. And this is something that I was dealing with for basically all of last quarter, was trying to figure out like, is this the right time to hire this person? Am I too early? Am I too late? How do I design the role? So how do you kind of get over that first hurdle of really understanding if you should hire and then what you need to be looking for in that person?
Yes. All right. So I discuss all the time that there's really four big signs that it's time to hire. And I encourage business owners to take a step back and once a quarter look to see if they have one of these signs, because sometimes we get too busy in the day to day and just going through that we forget to actually look at our business from that different lens and everything, especially early on when we're doing so much that we are the hands-on worker, we're the admin, we're the CEO, and we're everything in between. So we really need to take a step back and look at our business. And those four signs is one, you're saying no to your ideal client. So this can mean that someone wants to work with you. They are the client that you would love to take on, but you can't take them on right now. Or it could mean that you have a wait list, or you have to tell them, okay, it's a 4-week lead time before we take on a client and things like that. And those are things that become a norm, but people want to give you money now. And when you're looking at your goals and how you want to grow, you want to take that money now, but you simply can't. And yes, some businesses have wait lists that work for them. They can really show that they're in demand and they can increase their prices because they have these wait lists. But a lot of times wait lists actually don't work for businesses. So if you're saying no, that's a sign that you need to have extra help in your team so you can say yes to your ideal client more often. Then sign number 2 is you're losing customers due to poor customer service. And this is typically because of changes in your customer service. So if you have something that you always deliver on a 48-hour timeline, and now it's taking you 3 to 4 business days to complete that same thing because you have other things competing for your time, your clients feel that, especially your long-term clients. They know that now I have to wait longer for a response. Now I feel like you don't value me. You don't have time for me. Do you actually care about me as a client anymore? And all these things make people go, maybe it's time for me to start exploring taking my business elsewhere. So your retention rates on your clients start to go down, or you start to hear more that your clients are upset about the turnaround time, or they're always following up with you before you have a chance to respond or deliver what you needed to deliver. This also is when you're going to acquire new clients as well, is if you find that potential clients are going with someone else before you have the opportunity to connect with them, you might have a drain in that area where if you hired someone to just get that initial communication or schedule that consultation and have that first conversation with the potential client earlier, you could earn more business and help grow your revenue and everything there. So those additional team members can help keep your customer service levels where they need to be for you to be successful and to grow. And then sign number 3 is you want to do something new and different, but you can't because you're stuck doing what you're currently offering. So maybe you're 100% service-based business, but you want to start some product shop, even if it's templates or things like that, but you just don't have the time or energy to dedicate to creating that and marketing those items and selling those items and everything. Or, we're on a podcast right now. You want to start a podcast, but you're sitting there saying, where am I going to find time to do this? You know the benefits it's going to bring to your business, but you don't have time to sit there and learn the ins and outs and even record and do all those things that needs to get it done. If you see clients in a face-to-face capacity, you want to expand to a new territory, you want to have a second office or things like that, but you can't expand because you're stuck with what you currently do and you don't have the opportunity to bring on anything additional. And then the 4th sign is you lack skill or knowledge. So yes, there's a lot of stuff we have to learn as business owners. There's a lot of stuff that we don't know, and we need to learn it at a certain level in order to be successful. But then there's a whole bunch of stuff that it is not worth our time once we reach a certain level to become experts in. It's worth our dollars to hire the expert because they're going to do it better than we ever could. And it's actually going to cost us less to hire that person than it would be if we did it ourselves.
Yeah, opportunity cost is a big one that doesn't get considered on that last point, right? Where
Yep.
I ask this question to founders all the time around in our sales process, frankly, where it's like, are you talking to me because you think you can figure it out, but you value the speed of figuring it out sooner more? Or are you talking to me because you don't think that you can figure it out? And most people have this mentality. Most entrepreneurs have this mentality of like, yeah, with enough time and energy, I could probably figure this out. But it's like, what is the cost of not figuring this out for a year, 2 years, 3 years, however long it takes for you to like get this done off the side of your desk? And when we're hiring, we're often not thinking in those terms of like, yes, I might have to pay somebody this amount of money and I might take a risk on it, but what's the cost of this not getting solved for another year or two while I try to do it myself?
Yeah. And chances are, if it's something that we're not good at, we don't know it very well yet, it keeps getting pushed down to the bottom of the to-do list. Like I use ClickUp for my business. I feel like I have a very good understanding, but I set myself a goal of, oh gosh, when was this? This was at beginning of 2023. So we're a year and 3 months after I set this goal. I was like, I'm going to go through ClickUp University to find out and learn my little things that I don't know yet. I'm going to learn the things that I can improve on. So that way it increases the productivity and increases our project management capabilities and everything. And I'm going to do it. And I was like, I'm going to dedicate a little bit of time each week. And I was good at that for about 2 weeks. And I have not gone back to ClickUp University in over a year now because I was like, I just don't have time for it. And I've realized at times I was like, well, I think I just need to speak to a ClickUp expert to find out how do I actually use this where in different ways where it benefits my business. And me spending the time to learn everything to hopefully find some like improvements is not worth my time anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there you go. The ClickUp University dropout here. And maybe you should talk to the team at Zen Pilot. They're nice guys. Shout out to Gray
All
and,
right.
and the whole team at Zen Pilot. They know ClickUp very well. Okay. So in summary, if you're saying no to good quality clients, so you're gated on capacity and you're turning away good quality clients, your wait list is getting to a point where it's costing you business. You're starting to see slippage in customer service and things getting done because the team is too stretched, they're too overwhelmed. You are stuck doing the things that you're currently doing in the business, and it's limiting your business to pursue other objectives or strategic goals that you've got to grow the business, or you've got a deficiency in skill or in knowledge in the business. Those are kind of the key signs. I'll augment that by just providing some objective financial benchmarks as well, because I'm sure there's some people that are having this experience where like all of those things are true, but also my bank account has no money in it. So, okay, maybe you actually have a
Yes.
profitability problem that needs to get solved as well. And so the heuristic here is, if this is a delivery role, so it's really meant to improve your capacity, you want to try to keep your delivery payroll under 50% of the revenue that you think you could grow into if you brought that person in. And then on sales and marketing administration, you're generally trying to keep your total costs to within 30% between those two buckets of your revenue that, again, that you think you can grow into. So it's totally normal to overinvest a little bit up front if you know that you can grow into it, but that's how you would do the quick napkin math of saying, okay, if I add another $60,000 in payroll to my business, do I think that I can add at least another $120,000 in business to offset that, in order to make this work? So those are some benchmarks. I'll leave a link
Yes.
in the show notes to look at kind of the math on that as well.
Yes. Yeah, and I love that. And I love the fact that you brought that up because it always brings the next thing. It's like, what is your business telling you that it's time to hire? And then two, it's like, are you actually ready to hire? And so some of that is the financial thing. And it's like, yes, I look at it, say any position you bring in should have a positive ROI. So when you're talking about the data and that numbers, it's like, yes, you shouldn't always be having to pay for this position out of your current revenue source because the goal is to increase your business. Unless you're like, I'm just working too much in my business, get me out of this. I don't care if I ever earn an extra dollar. And then you have to be very, very clear and conscious that that time ROI is your only measurement and you're okay with staying flat on your profitability and your revenue. But yes, you have to make sure that you can afford the position. You have to make sure it's the right position that you're bringing in. Because just because you identify, oh, I have a wait list that's working against me, doesn't mean any position you bring in is going to help solve that problem. It's then taking that to say, all right, well, what's actually going to solve the problem that I have now? And where should my dollars be spent so I can get the ROI that I'm intending to have with hiring this person?
And so that brings us to a question that I really am interested to unpack today, which is how we should be looking at this process of hiring as well as onboarding differently depending on the kind of person that we're hiring. And, I think there's a lot of people dealing with this. I'm certainly at this point with Parakeeto where we've gone from mostly hiring individual contributors to now kind of reaching a point where those hires are starting to become increasingly management focused, or they're more strategic or more nuanced roles. And I think if you get used to hiring in a certain way where it's a very clear cut role, there's a lot of process, it's going to be quite an adjustment to go and hire a different kind of role that's more senior or that's going to take on more of a leadership role. So how should we be thinking differently about those two kinds of roles? And maybe even before we ask that question is, how do we know which one of those two things we need in the first place?
Oh, great question there. So the thing is we have to think about is what it's like, do we need another individual contributor? Do we need a people manager? Is you can only manage so many people yourself. So a lot of times I see businesses fall in the pitfalls of, oh, I have a team of 15 people, but they are the only manager, the only leader in the business, which means everybody that has a problem is coming to them. Everybody that needs coaching within and mentorship within the organization is coming to them, which is great. And you should be a strong people leader when you run a business, but that can't be your only responsibility. You have to not only be a people leader, you have to be a business leader. And if those things are not working together, it's really time to hire that people manager so you can focus on the business management and that really CEO role. If you look at large organizations, they can have thousands and thousands of employees, and how many people actually report to that CEO? Not very many people. A lot of C-suites might be 5 people, might be 7 on a large size, because that CEO is responsible for that business, and other people in the organization are responsible for the people. You don't want to get too far away from the people, but you don't want to be stuck with all the people management, because that people management is important. And if you don't do the people management, your business is going to suffer. But if you only do the people management, your business isn't going to grow the way you want it to grow. So if you have, I would say, a team of at least 5 team members, you should be starting to look at those middle management positions, because not only is it going to free up some of your time as that people leader, it's also showing there's a place to grow and move inside this organization. So even if one of your team members today isn't ready to move into that people management position and you have to go external for it, you at least want to show that there's growth potential internally, which helps with retention rates. So like I said, so once you get to about 5 team members, start looking at who should, what people leader position, or what people manager position should I be adding to help manage and help put that buffer between me and everything that team needs day to day. Okay. So then your question was about hiring and what we should really be looking for. So when we come to the individual contributors, there's a lot of tactical things that they're doing. There are a lot of the day-to-day execution things where we can really get detailed on, can they do this? Can they do that? Kind of going into some of the testing, show me, I'm going to give you this scenario and walk through it, or put together this project for us, or things like that. We can ask a lot of questions of challenges that they've overcome when it comes to the execution of work. When it comes to people leaders, we really need to go more into that strategic thought process, that leadership process, how they have difficult conversations, how they help with overcoming challenges and looking at innovative things, and whatever it is for in your business of what is coming up often from a strategic and management perspective. Not necessarily the day-to-day, because your people leaders don't need to know how to execute the day-to-day. They need to know how to oversee and lead that day to day. And I'm sure with you definitely agree with this. There should be a lot of data and everything that supports, are these people actually doing what they're supposed to be doing day to day? So can they review that data? Do they understand when things are not moving as they should be, and how to dive in and to look into the right areas so they can identify what are the problems and how do we fix the problem? So your people leaders become problem solvers, and whether that's with your product, your service, or with your people.
Do you want some free resources to help you measure and improve your profitability? If you do, then I want to tell you about our agency profitability toolkit, which you can grab absolutely free in the show notes or by heading to parakeeto.com/toolkit. It's packed with training videos, cheat sheets, templates, and all kinds of other great resources to help you start measuring and improving the essential metrics that are going to drive better profitability in your business. And it's helped thousands of other agencies around the world do the same. So I want to encourage you to go and grab a copy of that. And if you'd rather get in the fast lane and just have our team of experts guide you through the process of measuring and improving your profitability, then I want to encourage you to apply for a consultation at parakeeto.com. And with that, I want to thank you again for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the episode, and I'll let you get back to it. That's such a good insight. And it starts to speak to, at least for me in the hiring process, how I find myself shifting the kinds of things that I'm filtering for and that I'm architecting the hiring process for, where I'm always trying to sprinkle tests through the entire thing, right? And tripwires, and I'm trying to get a ton of applicants and then interview very few of them. And to your point, it's like, if I'm hiring somebody whose job is going to be making judgment calls and dealing with uncertainty and taking ownership of a certain area of the business, and as a manager, I need to give them a lot of autonomy while also having some accountability, then I want to be testing for that while I'm hiring them. So that leads us perfectly into like how we can be thinking about role design and then the actual recruitment or hiring process to help us get the right outcome, whether it's an IC or more of a senior person.
Yeah. Yes. There's some things and everything that you said there that I really like. And one of the examples that just came up to my mind while you were talking is just to kind of paint a picture for everyone. Like, let's say you own a marketing agency and your team members are doing SEO. Your manager doesn't need to know how to actually execute SEO and get there in the code and do these things and apply all these things. But your manager needs to be able to look at the data to say, is this working? And how do I either troubleshoot or guide my team through troubleshooting if things are not working? How do I have the conversations? What do I do? And of course, you mentioned you sometimes like to get a lot of candidates and only interview a few. I'm totally on board with only interviewing a few. But our goal a lot of times is not to get a whole lot of candidates, because we want people to deselect themselves before they ever apply. And getting a lot of candidates, like we recently had a job where we had to review 120 resumes to get down, I think it was to 15 interviews. But sometimes we're like, hey, I don't care if we only have 20 applicants, as long as they're 20 good applicants. Any of those 20, we might only interview 10. But I think with the hiring process, you're better off putting it out there very clearly that allows people to deselect themselves before they ever apply. Okay, so I think you asked a question and now I totally lost track of where I was going to go with that.
We'll start with role design, and that'll be one
Yes.
question because I think it's worth talking about. I mean, we just recently actually had this experience where last quarter we had set in OKR around hiring for a specific role. And then as we were working through that, we realized halfway through the quarter that what we thought the role was at the start of the quarter actually should be different. And it should have a different title and the responsibilities are slightly different. And then by the end of the quarter, we realized that we didn't actually need to hire for that role at all. We need to hire for something completely different. And so, like, just that process of trying to clarify what do we actually need here was quite nuanced, and it led us down a different path. And so this, I think, is a really important thing that is easy to overlook. So how do you design the right role and make sure that you're setting yourself up for success right from that point forward?
Yes, great question. Okay, so the first thing that we go through when we're working with a client that's bringing on a new role, and that's actually our sweet spot. We love helping clients bring on new roles that they've never had in their organization before. So the very first question we ask when we're getting into the role is, what does success look like, or how is your business going to be impacted because this position is added to the organization? So that starts a lot of the thought process of not just what is this person going to do day to day, but why are we even bringing this person on? What do we expect to get out of it? And sometimes we'll start off with like the tactical, well, I want them to have these types of conversations. I want them to do this. And I'm like, no, I don't care what you want them to do day to day. How are things going to change? How are things going to be different because you bring this person in? And then sometimes I have clients that go, well, they're going to save me time. And I'm like, okay, well, what does that look like when they save you time? What are you not doing because this person comes in, which allows you to do what else because this person comes in? And so we really start looking at that to say, what's the outcome? What do you want based on this position? Where should they be focused? What should they be doing? How are they impacting the organization? Then depending on how that conversation goes, I might throw it back out there as 6 months from now, a year from now, what is the number one sign of success? How would you say, wow? Or what would make you say, like, wow, this person was 100% worth bringing into our organization? What does that look like? And that helps get them out of that, I just need these tasks off my plate, to this is how this position is supposed to work inside the organization. And then we kind of go from there and we go down from there. We're like, okay, if this is the big picture of what this person's supposed to be doing, now what are they doing day to day? What does this look like? And what does it mean to be successful? So if they say, well, I really need someone to take the people management off my plate because I'm just so overwhelmed. Well, what does that look like? What types of problems are your team members always coming to you with that you want this person to handle instead? That's going to look different in different organizations. Well, how is this person's boss? How do you want to be involved in those things? Is it just give me an update when we have our weekly meeting? Or is it escalate to me on certain issues, or keep me 100% out of it? What do you want that relationship to be like with you? And yes, we'll talk through a little bit sometimes on, okay, you got to let go, you got to delegate, but at least that will sometimes give me an insight of how much control does this person want when they bring in a new person, so we can make sure we hire someone that is going to be able to deal with the management style of the owner of the business. So we really, once again, we start off with the goals, the impact of this position, what that's going to do, and then we let that trickle down into what is the day-to-day work that's going to support those goals, that is going to make it so that person can be successful there. Then once we have all that, we look at kind of the personality, the skill, and all those things that are going to make someone be able to do those things successfully.
Now, one of the things that I've certainly been guilty of, and thankfully I have a partner that is good at walking me off the ledge on this, but I've seen lots of other people do as well, is they go through this process on their own. And what they end up with is a job description that is describing a person that does not exist, or a person that is going to cost significantly more money than what they have budgeted for the role, or that is just going to take a miracle to find a person within their budget that is capable of doing all of the things that they want done well. Like, the wish list just ends up being way too long, way too aspirational. So any, I guess, tips for somebody that might find themselves there, even on just how to recognize that maybe that's what they've done in their job description?
Yeah. So some of the things that we look at that I've seen here is, one, let's talk about the budget at first. We look at budget when we're creating positions, but we always kind of bring that in later in the game. So that way we could say, okay, this is what you want. All right, if your budget's way down here, now we can have that conversation of, you understand that you're not going to be able to get this person based off your budget. So we need to make changes. Do you have more room in your budget that you can bring up? Do we take this role and turn it into a part-time or a fractional role instead of a full-time role that allows you to keep that same dollar, but now you're not paying someone as many hours? Or do we have to look at it and say, all right, this is what you want, but you can't have that today. Maybe that's the position 2 years from now. What are you going to hire for today that it's going to allow you to grow into that full dream position 2 years from now? So we start to say, let's look first at what you want, what you need, and then let's start looking at the reality of where those dollars can, where your dollars can take you. And we look at one of the easiest ways that we say, if you're doing this on your own, to look at is go start looking at similar positions on job boards. What are they paying? And either look in your area, or if there's not a whole lot of positions similar in your area, look at other areas and then do a quick cost of living converter. There's a lot of cost of living calculators out there to help you see, okay, roughly what does this mean for your area? So that way you can start to see what are people paying for similar positions, because that's your competition. People can see those jobs as well. So that's your competition. It also shows you sometimes what people are currently getting paid. So if you're looking to hire someone who's already in a similar role, you have to make sure that you're comparable. And if you're not comparable, then you can start making those adjustments. So that's one thing to look at, is like kind of that budget. The other thing to look at is the skills. So I was recently working with a client that they were actually considering making some changes for their marketing department, and they realized that they needed someone higher level. Well, they wanted someone higher level doing all this very specific strategic stuff, but then they wanted this person to do all this marketing execution that's kind of like very, very basic entry level. And I had to sit down and have the conversation with them. I was like, you might be able to find this person because you're a small business. There's other small businesses that might have similar roles, so you might be able to bring someone in. But the reality is, the person that has this high level knowledge and expertise in this area is past doing this day-to-day execution work in their career. And even if they're doing it now, they probably don't want to be doing this. So you're taking an entry-level position and attaching it to a year where you want 10 years of experience. And that just doesn't always mesh. Could you potentially find someone? Yes. And sometimes I say, try it, see what you can find. But the reality is sometimes it's two different positions, and you're better off hiring a part-time high-level person and a part-time entry-level execution work person instead of trying to find one person to do both, because it doesn't match where people really are in their career and what they want at that point of their career.
Yeah, and the other thing to realize there is that you're overpaying for that lower level stuff. We see this all the time in sales teams, right? Where it's like people expecting their closers to be doing cold calls. And it's like, that's a bad use of their time. Their highest leverage is being on a call closing. That is the highest amount of money that they can earn for an hour that they're being paid for. And you, as a business owner, and if you think about the economic model, you were incentivized to have them spend as much time as possible on that higher level stuff. So that's another kind of shift around that, because I see the same thing. I'm guilty of having fallen into that trap myself in the past. And you end up, with somebody that isn't interested in that work, and you're way overpaying for it.
Right. Well, I love that you brought that up, and especially with sales positions, is because there's a lot of people, their setup is, our salespeople don't have assistants. But then they're always being like, well, why isn't my salesperson doing the paperwork and updating the CRM and all that stuff? And I was like, but they're hitting their numbers. And I'm like, yeah, because they're out in the field doing the work that they're actually getting paid to do, that you want them doing. And are you okay with them not making as many sales so they could be updating stuff in the CRM system? And they're like, no, I want them making the sales. I was like, then get them an assistant. And they're like, but it's not on the budget. I was just like, but what is closing that one extra deal going to do? I'm pretty sure you can afford an assistant then. I was like, so it's like, you have to figure out, where do you want that person to be, and what are you paying them for? You're paying them to do one thing. Stop bogging them down with the lower level work.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about role design, and my key takeaways from this are, you kind of have to start with, what is the outcome that you want? What are the requirements to get to that outcome? Then look at what it costs to get somebody that meets that description. And that's where you can start the negotiation of, okay, these things aren't reconciling. So how do we close that gap, whether it's lowering the budget, whether
Yes.
it's increasing the budget, or it's trying to adjust the scope of the role to make that budget tenable and still get the essentials in the kind of requirements for the job. So assuming that
Yeah.
we,
I
yes,
do want to,
please.
yeah. I do want to put one thing. I just last week was at a conference and someone gave this example. And at first I was just like, where is she going with this? I was like, is she bragging? But she goes, back in the day, I used to drive a Ford. And then I drove, and I forget what she said, but it was some like higher level car. And she goes, and now I drive a Mercedes. And I was just like, all right, she's just bragging that now she drives, that she can afford to drive a Mercedes. And she goes, the reason why I'm telling you this is probably everyone in this room wants to drive a luxury car, but not everyone can afford to drive a luxury car based on where you're at today. But that doesn't mean you can't afford it later when you put in the hard work. So you have to invest and spend your money based on where you're at in order to get to where you want to go versus over investing if you can't afford it.
And the reality is that I remember Carl Smith from the Bureau of Digital once said this, and it really resonated with me, which is, as agencies, we are primarily going to be talent producers, not talent consumers. People come to work at agencies when they're early in their career. We often have to develop a lot of skills in them and invest a lot in them. And then in a few years, they're going to leave and go get paid way more money working at a tech company that can afford to pay them a significantly higher amount of money because their business model has stronger gross margins. That's just
Yes.
reality. And so I think embracing that idea that, like, yeah, you're not going to be able to go hire the super experienced person that has the rap sheet most of the time because they have other options that are more lucrative. You're probably going to have to right size that skill expectation and then have a plan on how you're going to build that skill set within people. And it becomes more about, I would imagine, hiring for cultural fit, personality, willingness to learn, and actually, really investing in that part of your organization as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's that whole thing. It's like sometimes it's recognizing that in your business and your business setup, that you're not going to have someone that starts with you right out of college and is with you until they retire. Like that's not the reality. So it's like, how can you get the most out of somebody while you have them? And if your average retention rate is 3 years, because that's when someone goes off to those big tech companies, get the most out of them in those 3 years and set them up for success for that next spot. So that way they refer you to those other people that are coming in and saying, this is an amazing place. You want to work there.
100%. Okay, so we've talked about role design. Let's talk now about going out and finding those great people that ideally fit that perfectly designed role that we've just worked on.
Yes. All right. So the first thing, as I mentioned before, a lot of our goals is not to get a whole slew of applications, but to get the right applications. Like we'd rather get 20 applications that are pretty much on the mark than 200 applications that are just way over all over the place. And the way that we do this is the first thing is you want to create a job posting that speaks directly to your ideal candidate. You want someone to read that and be nodding their head along and saying, oh my gosh, this is me. They just described me to a T, which also means other people are going to read that and go, gosh, no, that's not me. I don't want to work here. Or to say, no, goodbye. Like you want to turn people off, not because you're being rude or anything like that, just because you're being honest about what it's like to work for you and who's going to be successful in the role and what this role is going to do day to day. When we've gone through and rewritten clients' job postings, it's dramatically changed the number of applicants that they received and the number of quality applicants that they received. And so it really makes a huge difference when you really are honest with it. And so we use a lot of language of the idea candidate for this position is, this role is for you if, and we get really clear on what is the background, what are the skills, what are the things they're going to do they have to work with clients, do they not, like things like that. We get really specific in that job posting so people are going, yes, that is me. After they apply, it's then our responsibility as the business owner or the hiring manager to be reviewing the applications that come in. This is where a lot of people spend way too much time because they're trying to dissect every part of a resume that comes in and create this whole life story about a candidate. And you can do that, and it can take you a lot of time. And you're not going to have a very good success rate of bringing in the right people because you're going through a lot of assumptions and biases to make those decisions. So the way we train our clients is you look for three things. There's three must-have things that we want to see on a resume, and those will all change based on the position. So it's all a custom list that we provide our clients based on what we determine is really important for their position, we look for those three things. Do they have this type of experience? Do they show that they have these types of skills or whatever it is? These three things that we determine are important. If they have it, they go in the yes pile. If they don't, they go into the no pile. If our yes pile is too big, we then go through the nice to have criteria to rank them. But we stick with just a few things we're looking for, because that resume is a gatekeeper for an interview. It's not to determine if someone is getting a job, because we need to have conversations. And then we go through the interview process. I always say there needs to be a minimum of 2 rounds of interviews, because there's going to be people you love in the first round that when you have a second conversation with them, you're like, yep, nope, not the right person for this position. And with those interviews, every question needs to tie back to your ideal candidate. It needs to be a question that really uncovers their skills and capability, and not just their knowledge. So we don't want to say, tell me, how would you do XYZ? We want to ask questions around, give me an example of, like, tell me about a time when, and things like that really dive into their past experience. So that way you can understand, do they have the skills? Can they actually do what we want them to do, versus just knowing how to do? Because anyone can read a book and tell you how to do something, but can they actually apply that knowledge?
Okay, Jamie, we have covered a lot today, but it feels like we've only scratched the surface of what is an incredibly nuanced and incredibly important part of the business. So for those that are listening that want to learn more about you, want to consume more of your content, and want to learn about the rest of this process, where should we send them in the show notes?
Yeah, so you can head over to growingyourteam.com. There's a lot of great information there. Or you can go check out the Growing Your Team podcast, which you can get on all major podcasting platforms, or at growingyourteam.com/podcast. Marcel, I believe your episode was episode 220 that, as we're recording this, just released a few weeks ago. So go start with that one. And we have a lot of content around hiring and onboarding and managing teams within small businesses.
Awesome. And Jamie, you bring on some great guests. It's a great show. So we'll make sure to have links to that in the show notes. With that, any final words of advice for our listeners today?
Yeah, so just as you're going to hire, make sure you find the right person for you. Just remember that you'll find a lot of great people throughout the process. And just keep reminding yourself, just because someone's good at what they do does not mean they're right for you. So just make sure you're doing your due diligence, so you have the person on your team that's going to help you and your business and the rest of your team be successful.
Sound advice. Thank you for being on the show today, Jamie, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Let us know wherever you're listening to this what you learned and what you enjoyed outside of me getting roasted for being a narcissist in our hiring process. And with that, Jamie, thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you've ever found yourself thinking, man, I get so much value from this podcast, I wish there was something I could do to return the favor. Well, today's your lucky day, because you can leave us a review wherever you're listening to this, and it is incredibly helpful. Of course, if you haven't grabbed a free copy of the Agency Profit Toolkit, go and get that. It's got tons of free resources to help you improve your profitability. If you're looking to get in the fast lane and get help from experts to improve your profitability and measure your most important metrics, then apply for a consultation at parakeeto.com. We'd love to chat with you and figure out how we can help. With all of that, thank you so much for being a listener, and we will see you on the next episode.